Right, this is Kush Sharma from Creative Pad Media. We will be learning how to edit moon images inside Lightroom Classic in this video. You can also use this method if you're using Lightroom Mobile, or you can also use this in case you're using Photoshop's camera raw filter, because all of them will have similar sliders and settings, so everything is going to remain the same. I have provided you this image so that you can work along and edit along with me. You will be able to find the link to download it in the description of this video. And one final thing, even though we will be editing this quarter phase or the half moon here, you can use the same method in case you have a full moon shot. So for instance, I use the same method for one of my shots here, which is the full moon, but I usually prefer half moon because it just has more depth because of this shadow, and therefore you'll be able to see towards the end of the video when we finally give it the final composition, you can do a lot of amazing things which you can't do with a full moon like this. So that's why I usually prefer this, but the method will remain the same. So first of all, what we're going to do is let's just zoom into this, because usually most of the moon shots you're going to have like this with a lot of negative space, even though I took this at 600 mm, but still. So we'll need to zoom in a bit, and later on we'll crop it towards the end. So I'm just going to slightly zoom in here, maybe even more. No, I think this is fine. Now the first thing is, if you're seeing all these panels close, let's start off with the basic panel. Now, usually what's the first thing we do? We try to adjust the white balance and exposure, but in these shots where I'm noticing this bad looking yellow tint or an orange tint, I first like to color correct the photo before I go towards the tone part. So here what we're going to do is, if we go under color mixer here in Lightroom, you'll be able to see these things here. By default, it might be set to HSL, which is kind of similar, hue, saturation, lightness, and then you can work with the individual colors. But I like to use this on the color mode, because then it looks like this, where you get the individual colors here and its properties down below. But they are the same thing, okay? Now we know for sure this bad looking tint that we're getting is either going to be red or orange or yellow, right? It can't really be any of the other colors here. So a good way, because what we basically need to do is we need to turn down the saturation of the color which is making the moon look like this. So we know it's either going to be this, this, or this. So we'll test this. Let's start with red. And if you change the hue slider, if it has any effect, that means Lightroom is recognizing this as red. So let's see this. So we move this, nothing is happening, right? So you can just double click on this, it'll reset to 0. That means it's not red, so it's got to be between either the orange or yellow. So let's see for orange. Yeah, so you can see here this time, we know that orange will help us, right? So what we can do here is just double click on hue, let it get back to the normal, because we don't want to change the color. We just want to take down and reduce the saturation. And a lot of people, they like to do this, what I'm doing, by reducing the temperature here, but I've just seen it doesn't give as good a result as what I'm showing you right now. You can get to similar results by making the temperature cooler, but the overall result, I just find it's much better when you use the color mixer and actually work on the colors, because then you're also able to locally work on some areas which might not be the case with the temperature slider. For example, even though now we have reduced the saturation of the orange color and it looks pretty good, but if I was to zoom in towards the edges, sometimes this is going to happen, okay? So if I just move here, can you see that towards the edge also we have this particular issue? So you can see that we're facing these issues. So this time we know that we've already turned down orange and its saturation down to 0. But if we now select yellow, we'll be able to see that. Can you see that change in that outline on the edge? That means this is being recognized as yellow. So I'm just going to turn the saturation down here also. And now we know that none of this has any of the bad colors here, and you can start to see that we are getting the nice colors of the moon back. So we are done with the color mixer. Now is the time I like to go towards the tone part. So right now it looks a bit underexposed, and how I like to correct the exposure is I usually avoid anything that works universally. So sliders or settings like exposure and contrast are basically going to work like this. That is just going to do it for the whole moon. Okay, so a bit of it is fine, no problem. That's okay. But mainly I like to work with these four because they affect the moon locally. So the most important slider is going to be the highlights and the white slider, since we want to reproduce that glow which the moon is so popular for, right? So if I increase the whites here, just see. So highlights means bright areas, shadow means dark areas, whites are the brightest part, so even more than highlights, like literally close to white, okay, in the image. And blacks again, so shadows are like dark, but blacks are really going towards the black side, okay? So I like to start with white. So it's going to target mainly the brightest parts in this shot. So let's do that because we want to get that glow look, right? You see here? Not too much, because then you start to lose the detail. That is the balance that you have to play for when it comes to moon editing, that you're trying to get a good balance between the glow as well as preserving the details, because if I do it too much, you don't want to lose that nice texture, right? So I don't mind pushing it slightly right now, because one of the tricks we have up our sleeves is this highlight slider. So remember, these are the brighter parts again, but less brighter than the whites. So if we turn them down, they start to then reveal those details back again. So if you were to quickly do a before and after by using the backslash key, you'll be able to see that we've already come a long way. This is what we started off with. And just with a few sliders, we have gone from this to this. And I think now even the texture is looking good. We're getting a bit of the glow. I don't slightly mind pushing it more just to increase the glow a bit and turn the highlights down. Be careful with the shadows and the blacks slider, especially like me if you are using an older camera with an older sensor or like a crop sensor camera, basically a cheap camera which can't handle these parts very well without generating too much noise. So I was using a very old camera for this, and it's also not a very strong sensor. So here, if I just show you, if I raise the shadows, that means if I make the darker parts brighter, you're actually going to start to notice a lot of noise here. Right? Can you see? So this, even if I do it up till this much, you start to see a lot of color noise, right? So if this is coming in, don't worry, we have a color noise slider below, which will just help us correct this. But for right now, I don't want to really do too much to the shadows. In fact, if at all, I don't mind actually just slightly reducing it so that I know that if there was any sort of noise that was visible, it's just going to hide further without affecting the main image. Let's quickly see a before and after. Yeah, this looks good. And same with blacks, I don't mind just to not take the risk with that noise. The best thing, of course, is to use a camera which has a good sensor. I actually own the Nikon D7502, which is perhaps the best at low light performance because it's got a very, very strong sensor. I don't know why I didn't use it. I just forgot that time, or maybe I was lazy to get it and I was just using my other Nikon camera. But yeah, it's always good in these cases when you're doing any sort of night photography to use a camera with a good sensor, okay? But that's okay. We're really not seeing any noise right now here. The next important thing, especially in these shots for moon, is going to be to get the best of the texture out here, okay? So this is where the presence panel comes into play. So here you've got a couple of options that can help us, in particular texture and clarity. A lot of people get confused as to what is the difference, because the moment you start changing this slider, you do see a change in the texture. So here's the best way to remember it. Texture slider is going to work on smaller edges or smaller areas. Think of it like, are you seeing these little craters here? It's going to mainly affect that. Clarity, however, it works by increasing the contrast of the midtones. Now, that's a very technical way of understanding it. The best way of understanding this is clarity works on bigger areas. Like, are you seeing this big patch? It's going to make it more clear, or it's going to make it stand out more. So bigger areas like this, clarity. Smaller texture like this, the texture slider. Now, best part is we're going to increase both, but be very careful with clarity because sometimes then it can give a very bad look to the image like this. Like it really deteriorates the pixel quality. So we want to move them definitely, but in moderation. So let's just zoom in a bit. We're going to use a bit of texture. So can you see? Those small craters then start to really just become sharper. But you don't want to add too much because already the problem with moonshots is that, remember the original composition we got, even at 600 mm, it's so far that by the time we go so close, you're already losing out on the resolution. Now, that's not such a big problem because towards the end of this video, I will be showing you one AI tool which you can use at the end after you've exported it outside Lightroom to get rid of all those problems with the low resolution, and it just actually really enhances the quality. So that we'll see at the end, but still, it's already low resolution, so you don't want to push things too high because then it's really going to start adding artifacts and noise in this, okay? So then, this much is fine, that's it. So you don't want to do something like this. That will really deteriorate the image. Okay, so just a bit is fine. So let's see the before and after. We started off with, and you can see. And a bit of clarity just for these bigger areas, okay? So let's see, just a bit. Maybe around this much. So let's just zoom out a bit and let's see the before and after. Now we're getting that really glowy look with a nice contrast. Dehaze is up to you. It's just gonna, again, kind of just work on the contrast a bit, but it's not really doing too much. So that is fine. We've already used the color mixer. We don't really need to use things like tone curve and color grading here because we really don't have too much stuff to do with colors, okay? What we can do is we can go on to the details slider, and here, if we were noticing noise, okay? So then we can use, we don't need sharpening for sure because we've already used texture and clarity. But sharpening will just increase the little details here, but it also adds noise. That is something which is already there in it, so I don't want to mess with it further, okay? Noise reduction, we have a couple of options here. One is, if I was seeing that sensor noise here, okay? Then what I can do is, that's mainly going to be the color noise. It can also be the luminance noise. You can just check it, see which. If you were seeing that noise, just move both the sliders and see which one affects more. Usually in these night shots, it's going to be color noise, okay? So right now, since we're not seeing it, but I just wanted to show you that this works. So just for the time being, let me just raise the shadows. Let me remember that this is -5. Let me just maybe get it to this level so that in case you were seeing, you'll know that what to do, okay? So now can you see that? It's, in this case, of course, the change that it made was very less because we had artificially really made this worse, right? But you can see that it has an effect. So just see. Okay, not too much in this case, but this is something that you can use in case you're noticing something like this. You can also use the luminance noise slider, but be careful because if you really push it, yes, you can see that even in such extreme situations, it takes out the noise, but then it also removes a lot of details. Since we really didn't have that much noise, I'm just going to push this down and go back to our slider, put it back to around -4, -5, that's fine. And that is fine. If you want it, just to get rid of the noise on the surface itself, maybe you can just increase both of these just slightly, but I don't think that is necessary because at the end we will be using an AI tool. There is an AI tool in Lightroom itself, which is right here, which says denoise. But can you see it says denoise is currently not compatible with this photo format? That's because we are editing a JPEG image. If we were editing a raw image, then we would have had denoise available to us. And denoise is an artificial intelligence-based tool which you just hit OK and it's just basically going to figure out the best way to remove noise from your shot. Unfortunately for us, in a JPEG it's not available, but like I said, not a problem, we will do it separately outside. One of the things that you can do, which is kind of optional, is that you can slightly just increase the details here a bit, which is by going to Photo, Enhance, and then it's going to say Loading Enhanced Data, which is again going to show us this option of denoise, but it will be disabled for us, but it'll have a couple of other options. So you have in this enhance window, you have denoise, which we can't use because it's a JPEG image. There's another option which says raw details, which again works, for example, on a raw image, which is just going to improve the details in this shot. Again, can be important because we are definitely, because of the lower resolution, suffering because of that. So it's always good to edit raw images and then check both of these. It's definitely going to make an improvement. One of the things that we can use is this super resolution, because remember, resolution is one of the problems that we are facing with this. So if you want, you can hit this and then it's going to just, kind of try to increase it. So you can see it's already done this. And if I hit before, after, just slightly makes it better. So this time I don't mind. I can just hit enhance. All right, so it is done rendering the whole super resolution thing, which is basically kind of increase the resolution and it doubles the height and width of this particular image. But like I said, the main things are denoise and the enhanced details options, which were not here. So we will ultimately use AI later on. But right now, if we just go back to our original, the final thing that I like to do here is I like to just change the composition of this particular shot a bit, because just like this, the moon looks like pretty ordinary, okay? Because you have seen so many shots with a similar composition. So first of all, we'll crop this not only to get closer to the moon, we'll also rotate this a bit, because I've just found that that really looks much more imposing than this composition that we are getting. So if we just go over to the basic, above the basic panel here, we're going to see this crop tool, and then we're just going to crop it. Right now, we'll have to do this twice because we are going to be rotating this image. And I want to ultimately get really close to the moon. But before that, I just want to change its angle. So in order to rotate, you can go over to photo. Because even though we have, if I open this up, we have this angle changing tool. It only allows us to change this to 45 degrees like this. Okay, so we don't want that. We go to photo and we go to this. So the shortcut is Control plus the square, either of the square keys. So just remember that. You can hit this also, but we'll have to do it a couple of times. So first of all, let's crop this to get closer. And then I'm using Control or Command plus the square bracket keys. So do you want this angle? Do you want this angle? I usually like this angle the most. This looks the most imposing. And now I want to also get more closer to it, because remember, this is the moon shot. Whenever you're editing your shot, you always have to think, what is the thing that people usually don't see with their eyes? And that is a close-up of the moon. So that's what you have to give them. Get it as close as possible to them. So that gets the wow factor inside the shot. We can even reduce it from here because there's pretty much nothing there. Something like this, if we enter, can you see that? Instantly now, this just looks really, really imposing. But finally, because we do know that this, even though we did increase the resolution, but we still know that it's not enough. So ultimately, and we also couldn't use the built-in AI tools. So let's just do one step. We're going to export this image and then put it through an AI software. All right, so I have exported that image, and the free AI tool that I like to use to enhance the details and to upscale is this website called pixelcut.ai. You will be able to find the link in the description. I have used a lot of these upscaling and enhancement AI websites or tools, and for me, this till now really does the best job. Okay. Now it has a paid version, but we don't have to worry about it because it will still help us to enhance it to a certain extent without paying anything. So the moment you go here and the slash image upscaler, you're going to then go to upscale image and select the image that you want. So I'm going to hit that exported image. And now it's just going to take some time. It's not going to allow you to upscale it to 4x without paying. Also, this enhanced details option, which I'm sure will obviously improve the image, is also not available to us. But even the default result that we get here is going to be amazing. So it is already finished doing its job. So let me just download this particular image by hitting the download button, and then we'll open it up big and see the difference. Right, so this is the original which we exported out of Lightroom. And if I zoom in, this doesn't look bad, but can just start to see a bit of those artifacts and noise. But just to see the cleaner version, here you can see this is the one that the AI produced, and you can see that this just makes those edges much more cleaner, much more sharper, removes the noise, and the overall result just looks really, really clean. And overall, we've gone from this to this. So this is how you edit your moonshots. If you are someone who wants to learn the art of editing and post-processing using different types of software like Photoshop, Lightroom Mobile, Lightroom Classic, then do check out my online courses. I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to give this a thumbs up. Bye for now.